What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Devy Royale YouTube channel. As always, I'm your host, Kevin Coleman at DuBois_22. And we are back. And we're going to be talking a little bit different video. Recently posted a how-to Devy. Like, if you wanted to play Devy, I kind of gave you guys the bylaws and all that. And to be quite honest with you guys, like, there's not a lot of Devy content out there that's free and good. And I think that we do offer that. And so what we're going to be looking at today is Devy sleepers. So what we're going to do is we're going to be diving into guys who, possibly out there based on ADP, right? So based on kind of the mocks that we've been doing, we're going to look at the running back position. So we're going to focus on that. Who are some guys that can pop off? Think of your Javonte Williams out there, maybe even like your Michael Carters, guys that, in the past, you're like, hey, who is this kid? And then all of a sudden they rise up the crop and you're like, oh man, we got to get this guy. We got to draft this guy. Zach Charbonnet would be another one, right? So who are some Devy sleepers out there? And we're looking at guys going like late second to fifth round, right? And again, sleepers is a hard thing to talk about with Devy because, everybody's drafting everybody here. And somebody's sleeper in the third round might be someone's first round pick because values just fluctuate, or someone in the second round might go in the fifth round. So sleepers are tough. So what we're really looking at is like based on value of our ADP Devy mocks that we do, and we do it on our Patreon as well. What are some value there that we are seeing in drafts that, like, if you're going to reach on maybe those mid-tier running backs, who should you go grab? Where are those values at? And maybe guys that you haven't started league yet that you could be looking at drafting in maybe your rookie drafts or your startup drafts. And where is that value? So we're going to be going through it. I'm going to be looking at 5 running backs that you should be targeting, kind of going through, and then maybe a little bit of an extra after the intro. All right, so let's get into this thing. Let's talk about, like, hey, who are some values out there? And like always, what I'm going to go through just to highlight them. What are they at? And then I'm going to also go through their ADP right now. And then we're going to look at all the guys that are not freshmen, like Justice Haynes here, that have already played in the league in the college football season on their teams. We're going to look at some of their PFF advanced stats for you. So let's talk about Justice Haynes, though. I think, for me personally, looking at him, some people are like, he's not a value, you idiot. But in terms of Devy drafts and where he's going right now, I think he had a good spring game. So he was definitely a value before the spring game that he happened. Now, we've highlighted him on here. He's my current running back 2. He probably should be my running back 1. But just based on where he's at, he's in that tier. And looking at where his value has been going in certain drafts, I think he's still a value, right? So when you're looking at him, this is his senior year, what he did, 1,600 yards, 23 touchdowns. He scored 3 touchdowns in the spring game for Alabama. And to me, he's still not getting value the way he should, right? So here's his player outlook. So this is what his ADP is right now. Right now, late second, and in a recent mock we just did, he went at the 301. Now, that was right before the spring game, so I'm assuming he's going to go mid-second still. But if you're looking at some of the guys getting drafted around there, Malik Neighbors, I like Malik Neighbors from LSU. I was probably on him earlier than most people, but based on just what a elite running back prospect came to you, Haynes could be running back 1 of this class, right? If you could draft him, so think of like Singleton, who was getting drafted in the first. Travion Henderson was getting drafted in the late first and during his freshman year, going in his freshman year. So when you just look at that from that perspective, Haynes is probably a sleeper, is that he'll probably be a first-round pick next year. I know the Alabama running back is loaded, but just based on value, based on what he's perceived as, Saban talking about him, he's going to see that field, right? I think that he's going to outperform his ADP, and that's what you look for in sleeper. As far as a player prospect, potential workhorse, 3-down guy, he had a couple passes. He's got to improve that a little bit. But short area burst, I think he's got that really good. That one-cut elite back, crush spring ball, absolutely looked fantastic there. I did a podcast with Jared from the C2C and ideas of like what he looked at. And we talked about him and we said, hey, maybe he has that Najee Harris type rise. Remember his freshman year, had a bunch of guys in front of him, but he looked good. He looked like he busted out of there. That could be what we're thinking with Justice Haynes. Now, as far as improvement areas, pass catching is one of those things, and then crowded running back room. But as like a prospect, he is pretty far in between other guys. So I don't necessarily think he needs to really improve anything from as a running style, from a running back standpoint. I think there's little nuances to his game, but that's a pretty sure bet going around where he's going, right? And thinking about like guys like Troy Franklin getting drafted ahead of him, where, what's the value with Troy Franklin? That's probably a ceiling going in mid-second, right? Troy, and I like Troy. But then if you can get Justice Haynes, I think that's where the value is. I talked about this in the running back tiers video. Target elite running backs, that's where you have to go, okay? Now, my next guy, Katron Allen from Penn State. Now, try to put these guys in order based on where I think their value is and going over. Now, he split time last year with Nick Singleton, 167 attempts, 867 yards, and 10 touchdowns. He's going to continue to split time with Singleton. That's why his value is always going to be a little lower, because they're going to have that kind of running back kind of by committee, and Singleton's going to get all the love. But to be honest, Katron's probably, Katron Allen is probably just that guy that he's an NFL back. He's going, like, in terms of his ADP right now, where he's at, mid third, running back 12. And this is by the numbers. So when you're looking at PFF's grades here, got to give them a shout out. And again, PFF grades you take it with a grain of salt. But when you're looking at the numbers, basically 3 yards after contact, right? 46 missed tackles forced. This is all from his last year here. 25.7 breakaway percentage and 82.6 elusive rating, which is pretty high for a back his size. And when you saw him kind of get that workload, he can play. And I think that when you're looking at it, if you can project those guys in that class, like who can step up and maybe be a top 5 guy, Penn State realistically might have 2 top 5 running backs in their backfield. That's how good Allen has been. And he's got the size. He got the frame that you like there. He looked good against Rutgers. He had that 117 yards, 111 against, Central Michigan. And he looks solid, like very efficient runner, right? Very efficient. Where you saw Ohio State, he had 12 carries, 76 yards, and a touchdown. So he looked good in those games. Look for Katron Allen being a value in that third. If you don't want to pay up for Singleton, if you feel like, hey, that's pretty much his ceiling, going the top 6. If you want to go after another position, maybe wide receiver like I like, and then go through and get Allen later, that's an interesting area. Now, my next guy here, Trey Benson from Florida State. I'd be remiss not to talk about him because we talk about him all the time in our Discord. But 2022 last year kind of had that breakout year, 990 yards, 9 touchdowns. When you're looking at the advanced stats here, he's going late third in some drafts. It really depends on who you're drafting with, right? As far as us, if you're drafting our guy Cole, it's in our Discord, he's going to draft in third round every time. But in other drafts that I've seen, going to fourth and maybe sometimes the fifth, so his ADP is all over the place. And I feel like Trey Benson's one of those guys, if you don't really follow college football too much, or if you don't follow kind of like the Devy area and the values and all that, he's a kid that could really step up. 6'1", 215 range. He had those big games last year. Really was his first year actually really kind of coming out of there, stepping into a Florida State team that is ready to compete. Jordan Travis, the wide receiver room, like he could have 1,000 yards in this game this season coming up. He's not splitting work more than likely. So when you're looking at that, and he really came on at the end of the year last year, like once the Georgia Tech game hit, he rushed for 100 yards in every game the rest of the season except for against the Raging Cajuns. And then in Oklahoma, he didn't have the greatest game, but he did show some catching upside this season too. Trey Benson could be a sleeper. Looking in that late third, early fourth, especially in the fifth, if he slips there, that's what you're looking at. And if you see the numbers there, yards after contact, really good. Missed tackles forced, really good. Elusive rating was off the chain. When you're looking at his elusive rating based on his efficiency numbers, that's what you're looking at. He's an elusive back moving forward. And that's something to kind of look at when you're looking at that. Now, next guy, Trevor Etienne. Again, Florida looks kind of like a dumpster fire right now. So just to understand, their offensive line is a little bit banged up. Who's going to be the quarterback is a little bit banged up. You have your Henderson just transferred. So really, when you're looking at this, they're going to have to lean on Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne. I think Etienne's the better value because I think Etienne is a better NFL prospect, and I think that you can get him at a discount for what his talent is. When you're looking at what he did last year, and there's his ADP, early fourth, so you're not really spending a elite pick on him. Yards after contact, 3.87, missed tackles forced, breakaway percentage. I thought his elusive rating was really good. I think he's ready. I think he's set up to just be that kid. Like he in the open field, he has quick feet, able to explode. You saw plenty of times last year where he exploded through that line and was able to make plays happen. And he can do that. Like, I think that moving forward with him, I think he has good vision, kind of able to make guys miss, as you see from kind of that elusive rating, that breakaway percentage, take that next step, be that deep guy. I like his size. I like his frame where he's at. And he played in all his games last year. And you saw that, like, he looked very, very explosive in those games. And that's a kid that maybe could pop up if we're talking about rankings and where we're looking at in that class, right? That's the 2025 class. That's what I think you have to project forward. Etienne could be that kid. And I think they're going to lean on that rushing attack. They have to lean on that rushing attack with just how bad that quarterback play is going to be. And I think that Etienne could be a big benefactor of that. Like right now, I have him as my running back 4 of the class, and getting a running back 4 in the 25 class in the early fourth, mid fourth, I think is a value. Now, next guy, Jarquez Hunter. I think we have to talk about the Auburn running back again. When you're looking at him, what can he be moving forward? Tank Bigsby's gone now. He's kind of shown flashes. People, I really liked him more than Tank this last year. And he kind of came out. That offense has kind of been a mess. But moving forward, Hugh Freeze, offensive kind of that rushing attack that we like to see. Hunter's got the frame, the size that you really like. Like to me, I think Jarquez Hunter's that guy that we're talking about is like, hey, could be that potential breakout. A lot of guys are talking about it, and I've seen a lot of people kind of mention it and move forward and say, hey, this could be the kid next year that we like. But his ADP is not catching up. So when you look at his ADP, late fifth is where he's going right now. And I feel like he's the type of guy you take a shot on, right? You're not taking to take a shot on a sub 200 kid. You're going to take a shot on a kid that's listed 5'10", 210, can really kind of like be that kid. And it looked really good in games last year. 121 yards against Texas A&M, looked really good against Mississippi State, showed kind of the ability to do that 62-yard touchdown reception. So he does have that pass catching pedigree and that rushing pedigree. So we've seen that. Like, these are the things that excite you about that. So when you're looking at when you're trying to target these kids, so Jarquez Hunter, some of these running backs in that time frame, and you're looking at the values out there, you're really looking, just seeing if they could step up and be there. Other guys that I could have put in this, Damian Martinez from Oregon State, could be that kid going forward. Hey, that's another kid that could easily be on this list. To me, he's not so much a sleeper because people really know him. But based on his value and his ADP right now, 5th round, Damian Martinez, because he's easy on this list, right? So what are you looking at? Like, what are you trying to accomplish when you're looking at like sleepers? To me, it's like, can they improve their values to be trade assets? Now, I've talked about this multiple times. You have to flip your assets, trade them as you can. Don't just let them sit in your roster. These sleeper running backs are guys that you can ship and move during the middle of the season if they're having a very good collegiate year and win your NFL side. The one thing that you can do as a Devy player and a Devy fantasy player is someone that you can flip and go win your leagues on the NFL side. Too many guys build to the youth and they never have enough time to actually compete, right? Get some of these running backs and guys and you can flip them. But Justice Haynes is one of those guys that I absolutely love. I wouldn't necessarily flip right away, but he could extract value. So those are some sleepers to the running back position. I'm going to be doing sleepers at other positions as well as we get transition here until May and June and the dog days of like, hey, Devy in college football. So we'll get into some of those. Let me know what you think. Do you have any other sleepers out there that you like? Let me know in the comments, and we appreciate you guys. I'll check you guys next time.